Hey, church, it's your Pastor Charlie here, and we're here for another one of our Wednesday night online Bible studies. I hope you're joining with us right now. It should be right around 7 p.m., and so I hope it is at your house. If not, just a reminder you can always go and watch it later. It'll still be on our Facebook page or our YouTube page. So let's just dive right into the story we think we may know this week. Now, I have to admit, I'm always this time of year thinking about these three characters that we're talking about today. It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You may be wondering why during the Easter season do I think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Well, actually, it goes back to when my children were little. You see, the VeggieTales came out with one of their stories about one of their cartoons, and it was about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and King Nebuchadnezzar. But they called them Rack, Shack, and Benny, and they worked for Nebuchadnezzar in his Easter bunny, his chocolate Easter bunny plant. And that's how they told the story. And so it just always makes me think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego at Easter. So it's one of my most favorite stories. It's probably one that you've heard. But I want us to really think about this in some different ways. And I want us to really start to see that there's more to this story than just kind of a neat little story. I mean, you know that there was an idol that was made, that King Nebuchadnezzar had made a gold statue. We sometimes say that it was one of him, but the scriptures don't say that. It actually says that he made an image of gold 60 cubits high and 60 cubits wide and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So you see, scripture doesn't say it was an image of him. It was just an image of gold. We sometimes infer that because he had some dreams where he was going to make one of those, but was kind of told that's not a good idea by Daniel. You know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're friends with Daniel. You find them in chapter 1. They're taking that stand that Daniel took to eat only food from the Jewish tradition, so eating the vegetables and the fruits and not eating the meat that had been sacrificed to idols and all that decadence that they were trying to feed them. Because you see, these is happening during a time of what's known as the Babylonian exile. Matter of fact, if you turn over to Kings, the last couple of chapters in Kings, you see Nebuchadnezzar actually come about in there. He goes in, and we're talking 600, 500 BC in that area of time. But you're talking that Nebuchadnezzar, the last two kings mentioned in 2 Kings, did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And every time that a king did evil in the eyes of the Lord, which happened about every other king, or sometimes more often than that, you would have them, God would send somebody in to kind of take over Jerusalem, take over the Israel nation and put them in bondage or just destroy them or whatever. And that's kind of what's happened. And so Nebuchadnezzar has come and he has taken all of the Israelites, the rich ones, the intelligent ones, the smart ones, and he has put them in exile in his country of Babylon. And Daniel is there, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are there. And so they're some of that choice elite. Now, Nebuchadnezzar actually went back in 2 Kings 24. He actually goes back and completely destroys the entire city of Jerusalem and the temple and just wipes it just completely clean. And so that's kind of where we are in this story. So we're in exile, we're in Babylon, we're not in our home country, but we're actually kind of viewed with a little bit of high standard. Matter of fact, Daniel is placed in a high position, and he is a ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all of its wise men. So that's where Daniel is. But then in verse 49 of chapter 1, it says, chapter 2, it says, moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained in the royal court. So Daniel's a little bit higher up, But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are right there. They are some big governmental officials for Babylon. So what we start to see here is we now see the king has decided to make an image for people to worship. Now, and as we talk, it's the entire chapter 3, so I'm not going to read it all to you. But the king tells them, he says, nations and people of every language, this is in verse 4. Nations and people of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. So that's the decree from the king. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when the horns blow, they don't bow down to the image. They're remembering Exodus chapter 20, verse 10, the first 3 verses of that. And I'll flip over here. Let me see if I can flip over here pretty quick. Yeah, it's right here. The first little bit of that, if you're not familiar, Exodus chapter 20 is the 10 Commandments. It says, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down for them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. So you see, they're knowing that. They know that those commandments that God has given, those first 2 commandments that God gave to Moses, generations ago. And so they're not going to bow down to this golden image. I mean, let's also face it. They had probably seen what had happened over the years when kings built images and made people worship, or they knew the story of the golden calf. I mean, we have tons of knowledge about other idols being made and what God how God would punish those generations of people for bowing down to an image. And so they refused to do that. Well, in verse 8 it says, at this time some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. So they're denouncing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they basically rat them out. What I would call, they were snitches. And where I grew up and in the sports world that I was in, snitches get stitches. You don't rat people out like that. But these astrologers, they were jealous because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had reached this level in the government. We see this happen again later on in the book of Daniel, if you remember the story of Daniel in the lion's den. So you've got some jealousy involved here. And these astrologers, they don't want Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego around. They don't want them ruling. They want to be ruling themselves. So they're seeing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as being these people that they can take down now because they're not following the king's command. And the king said if nobody bowed down, then they would be thrown in the furnace. So they're like, this is our chance. Now I want to stop right here and ask a question. Are we sometimes like those astrologers? I think we need to analyze our lives in perspective sometimes. You hear me say that all the time. We don't need to justify our lives. We need to analyze. And this is a moment where we need to analyze for a moment. Are we sometimes like those astrologers? I'm reminded of times that I've seen it in my own life, and I've done it. Somebody has a faith that's stronger than mine, and I know it's stronger than mine. And instead of trying to live up to their example of faith, well, I'll make statements like, oh, they're just Jesus freaks. No, they just holier than thou. We try to knock them down, don't we? We try to bring them to us, to our level, instead of admiring them for their strength in their faith and trying to reach that level of faith that they have. We just to try to knock them down and bring their life down. And it's kind of like the old saying, misery loves company. And so in our misery, we try to bring people with us. In the misery of our faith, sometimes we try to bring people with us. And so I want to just ask you, just analyze where you are in that. Because I think oftentimes we do it, we don't even know it. But there's another thing in this that I think we often do and we don't even know it. And that is, do we bow down to idols? We see here in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it's like, it's an image of gold. So, you know what, we can say, well, we would never bow down to an image of gold. We would never, somebody build something and ask us all to bow down to it. We're not going to do that. That's against what God says. But do we not have idols of our own? I mean, it's an easy decision. It's an easy answer when it's a statue. But do we create idols out of our kids? Do we idolize our family life? Do we idolize our work? Do we idolize religious artifacts? Do we idolize denominations? Do we idolize tradition? All of these things can become idols, and there's many others that can become idols. And I think we need to start asking ourselves, do we have idols in our life? Is there something that we actually will put before God? And folks, again, let's not justify, let's analyze. Let's don't start coming up with the reasons why you're not idolizing them over God or those things over God. Let's analyze, are we putting things above God? I know of a gentleman who was a member of a Methodist church, and I'd heard him say on more than one occasion, I'm not sure I'm a Christian, but I am a Methodist. Heard it in other churches, other denominations. I'm not sure I'm a Christian, but I am this. What a sad statement. But it's something that we as a church need to address in our lives. It's something that we as people who call ourselves people of God need to address in our lives. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down to the idols. Daniel would not bow down to the idol. But do we bow down to idols in our daily lives? I don't know. But it's a challenge. It's something we need to really examine in our lives and make sure that we're following that very first commandment. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. I think one of the other things we need to see in this story finds in verse 16. So, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have been brought to King Nebuchadnezzar. they're standing there, and Nebuchadnezzar is asking them, did you bow down? Did you do this? And they're like, no, we didn't. And he says, well, okay, well, we're going to try this again. We're going to give you a second chance. And they're like, well, I mean, you can do what you want to. Matter of fact, it says this. He says, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty bold. I mean, I'd go big or go home right there. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're looking at the king who had made a decree that if you didn't bow down, I was going to throw you in the furnace. And they basically said, look, you're going to have to throw us in the furnace. We're not going to bow down to this idol. Matter of fact, they even go as far, we're not even going to bow down to all of your gods. Not just this one idol, but anything that you say that is a god, anything that you deem as a god. We're not bowing down to it because we worship the one true God. Now, like I said, that's bold. But they said it. But then listen to those words. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. They're looking at the king and they're saying, look, there's nothing you can do to us. And they're saying that notice the words. It says, we believe that he is able to deliver us from it. That's talking about the furnace. And then it goes, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. They're not sure exactly how the deliverance is going to happen. Okay? They're not sure of what is fully going to happen. And then it goes, but even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty. So they're unaware fully of what's going to happen. They know the king's going to throw them in the furnace, and they believe earnestly that God can protect them and that he is able to protect them. And they believe earnestly that the king will not have control over this situation, and they will be delivered from the king's hand. But they're not sure of how all of that's going to happen. They're not sure that God's going. Maybe his deliverance will be their eternal reward in heaven. See, they're not sure 100%, but they do know God can protect them. So they're not letting the fear of the consequences affect their decisions. And so I want us to ask this question. Are you afraid of the consequences of standing firm in your faith? What do you think the consequences are of standing firm in your faith? I mean, we're told in the New Testament that we're going to be persecuted. We're going to go through trials and tribulations. We as Christians believe that people are going to talk bad about us. We believe that people are going to make fun of us. A lot of us, some of us may have even experienced that. You can read the stories time and time and time again of persecution of the Christian church, where people are killed for just gathering in worship. Beaten, thrown in jail. All of those things. I mean, we've got all the stories. We know that's going to happen. But my question to you is, are the consequences for standing firm in your faith, are they scary to you? Are you afraid of them? And so you will back down in an argument. You will back down in a situation where your faith gets challenged because you're afraid of what somebody will think about you or what somebody will do to you, or maybe you'll lose friends, or maybe one day we're going to get to a place where you'll be put in jail. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not afraid to go into the fire. As a matter of fact, if you continue to read down, the king got the furnace so hot, he said increase it 7 times, and he got it so hot that when the soldiers who took them up there and threw them into the blazing furnace, those soldiers died because of how hot the furnace was. But then Nebuchadnezzar looks in that furnace, doesn't he? And what does he see? He sees a 4th man. Some Bible translation says that it was the Son of God, talking about Jesus. Others just say that Nebuchadnezzar said that it looked like a son of a God, which literally translated would mean messenger or angel, something of that nature. So we don't know if it's Jesus, and that's not worth the argument today. What is worth the discussion today is that they were not afraid of the consequences because they knew God would protect them. And for them, in that moment, that protection was this messenger from God who came and protected them from the flames. Just like Daniel was protected from the mouths of the lions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were protected from the flames. And that protection was sent to them by God. So they didn't have to be afraid of the consequences because they had God on their side. You know, it's that famous statement, if God is with us, nothing can stand against us. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego exemplified that. So, I guess my question is are you firm enough in your conviction that God will protect you, that you can willingly stand firm in the challenge of your faith? It's hard. Because let's face it, oftentimes our faith never gets challenged like that. But I'm telling you, it's coming. It will. And will you stand firm, or are you going to be afraid of the consequences? I hope when that day comes for me that I will stand firm. I hope that I have learned the lessons from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and from Daniel, and from Moses, and from all the others, from Peter, from Paul, all the stories of their arrests and their beatings and all of that stuff. And I hope and pray that I have learned from their example to stand firm in the faith of God, because I know that I know that I know that God will deliver me and He will protect me. Guys, if you want to download the questions for this, it'll be on the website. And you just go to the website, pampafumc.com, and click on the link that says Online Bible Studies, and there'll be a picture for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You click on that, and your questions will come up, and you'll be able to download them. And again, I encourage you, talk to other people about this. Share this story, this study with them. Learn how to communicate with each other. It's such a huge part of discipleship is small groups. And so make sure you do that. I also want to let you know that we have a few other things coming up. You know, we've got our Holy Week is upcoming, and we're going to have a lunch and devotion every single day that week. We're also going to have our online study on Wednesday, but then on Monday, Thursday, we're going to have a time of communion. So come up for a service of communion here in our sanctuary at 201 East Foster, Pampa, Texas. We'd love for you to bring guests, bring visitors, all of that stuff. And then we're going to have Easter Sunday. There's going to be a sunrise service put on by the Ministerial Alliance at Central Park at 7 a.m. on Easter Sunday morning, April 4th. And then, of course, we will have our Easter celebration. So we'd love for you to come and participate with that with us. We will have communion on Easter Sunday. I have a good announcement for you. After much thought and just seeing where we are today, we will have our regular communion on Monday, Thursday, and on Sunday, April 4th. So those of you who have been asking, when are we going back to normal stuff? We are going back to normal. Sunday, April 4th, everything, we will have regular communion with the bread and the juice. And so just wanted to let you know that so that you can be aware of what's happening. Guys, I really appreciate you joining us today as we talked about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I look forward to hearing from you later on. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email at charliemac1202@gmail.com. You can post on this Facebook page. Let us know you watched it. If you don't mind, we'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you all again. Let's pray, and then we'll go. Father God, give us the strength of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Give us the faith and the strength to stand firm in our faith as they did. Guide us. Deliver us as we know that you will. Protect us. In your name, amen. We'll see y'all next week.